My husband texts, Happy 15th anniversary, babe. But I was two tables away, watching him kiss his millionaire boss. Hi, welcome to my channel. Thanks for being here. Enjoying my new story.
15 years after our wedding, my husband texted, I'm stuck at the office. Happy anniversary, my love. But I was sitting two tables away in that very restaurant, watching him pour champagne and lean in to kiss his boss. My heart pounded, and I stood up intending to expose everything. But a cold hand gripped my wrist. A whispering voice commanded, Sit down. Don't rush. You haven't seen it all yet. And the very next moment, the truth began to unfold, layer by layer. I appreciate you being here so much. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from right now? Your city, your country? I want to hear from you. A reminder, this story contains fictional elements designed for entertainment and learning. While names and places are imaginary, the lessons and insights I'm offering are meaningful and worth your time. The text came at 5:47 p.m. on October 12th, 2024, our 15th wedding anniversary. I was standing at the back counter of Caltaway's Bakery, hands dusted white with flour from the afternoon's final batch of sourdough, when my phone lit up on the stainless steel work surface. Jordan. My part-time employee was wiping down the display cases near the front window, where the last of the day's cinnamon rolls sat behind smudged glass. The October sky outside had turned that particular shade of Portland gray, the kind that settles in around 5 o'clock and doesn't lift until morning. Judith, you heading out soon? Jordan called over her shoulder. She was 26, art school dropout, worked mornings at the bakery and evenings at a vintage clothing shop in the Hawthorne district. Good kid, reliable. Big anniversary dinner tonight, right? I reached for my phone before answering. The screen showed Mitchell's name and a preview of words I'd been half expecting for 3 months. Stuck at the office. Big case deadline. Can't make dinner tonight. So sorry, honey. Happy 15th anniversary. I love you. 2 red heart emojis, a kiss face emoji, the digital shorthand of a man who'd been lying to me for 18 months and had gotten comfortable enough with it that he could decorate his lies with little cartoon hearts. Change of plans. I said, sliding the phone into the pocket of my apron. My voice came out steady. 15 years of marriage teaches you how to keep your face neutral when your chest is caving in. I'll still go. No sense wasting the reservation. Jordan turned concern, creasing her pierced eyebrow. You're going alone on your anniversary. Judith, it's fine. I untied my apron, hung it on the hook by the walk-in cooler. The fabric still carried the yeasty warmth of the ovens, the smell that had defined my adult life more than any marriage ever could. I already paid the deposit. Might as well eat something nice. She didn't push. That's what I liked about Jordan. She knew when to let silence do the work. I'd built this bakery in 1989 when I was 25 years old and newly divorced from my first husband. Emily was just a baby, then Sarah still 3 years away from being born. I'd taken out a $12,000 loan from a credit union on Sandy Boulevard, the kind of place that still smelled like old carpeting, and kept your application in a physical file folder. The loan officer had looked at my business plan, handwritten on yellow legal paper, and said, Your mother's a mail carrier, right, Della Calloway? When I'd nodded. She'd stamped approved across the top page. Any woman who carried mail for the post office for 30 years probably raised a daughter who pays her debts. She'd been right. I'd paid that loan back in 18 months. 35 years later, Calloway's Bakery was still here. Modest storefront on Hawthorne Boulevard, blue and white awning. A wooden sign I'd painted myself that was now weathered enough to look intentional. I made $68,000 a year after expenses paid 2 part-time employees, and baked bread that people drove across town to buy. It wasn't wealth. It was honest work. Mitchell had come into my life in 2007 at a community fundraiser for Grant High School's arts program. I was 43, he was 41. Both of us had been married before. Both of us had learned that loneliness wasn't the same as being alone. He was an accountant, steady kind, the sort of man who showed up when he said he would. We'd married 2 years later at City Hall, a small ceremony with Emily, Sarah, and his sister in attendance. I'd worn a cream-colored dress from Nordstrom Rack. He'd brought stargazer lilies because I'd mentioned once that I liked them. For 15 years, we'd built something. He'd supported the bakery through the lean years. He'd walked Sarah down the aisle at her wedding because her biological father hadn't bothered to show up. He'd taught Emily how to change a tire, how to read a credit report, how to be the kind of man who didn't run when life got hard. And then about 18 months ago, something had shifted. Work dinners that ran late. Weekend conferences that I couldn't attend. A new password on his phone, something he'd never had in 14 years of marriage. Cologne I didn't recognize. A distance in bed that felt like lying next to a mannequin. I'd told myself it was stress. Mitchell was the chief operating officer at Thornhill and Associates, a mid-sized law firm downtown. The legal world was cutthroat. Long hours came with the territory. But 3 months ago, July 12th to be exact, I'd found a hotel receipt in his suit jacket pocket while doing laundry. The Sentinel Hotel, room 318, July 11th. $347.82. The itemized charges had included 2 bathrobes, 2 champagne flutes, and room service for 2 at 11 p.m. I'd almost called him right then, almost screamed into the phone and demanded the truth. Instead, I'd folded the receipt back into quarters, tucked it into my jewelry box, and started paying attention. Over the last 3 weeks, I'd done things I wasn't proud of. Driven past the Sentinel at odd hours watching for his car. Walked by Thornhill and Associates during my lunch break, even though the law firm was 12 blocks from the bakery and I had no business being there. Called his assistant with careful, casual questions about his schedule. I thought I was being subtle. I didn't know someone else had been watching me watch him. Jordan left at 6:15 after helping me lock up the register and cover the unsold loaves with linen cloth for tomorrow's discount rack. I stood alone in my bakery, my 35-year-old kingdom of flour and fire, and let myself feel it for just 10 seconds. The anger, the betrayal, the sick, hollow certainty that tonight would confirm what I already knew. Then I locked the door, got into my 2015 Honda CR-V, and drove home through streets slick with the season's first real rain. The house was a craftsman bungalow in the Hawthorne neighborhood, 3 bedrooms, a porch that needed new boards, a kitchen we'd remodeled in 2011. We'd bought it together the year after we married, a shared investment in a shared future. Tonight it felt like walking into a museum of someone else's life. I showered, put on a simple navy dress, nothing fancy. I was 60 years old and past the point of trying to look like someone I wasn't. Brushed my gray hair back into a low bun, stood in front of the bathroom mirror and looked at the woman staring back. She looked tired. She looked like someone who'd spent 15 years trusting a man who'd spent the last 18 months making a fool of her. I walked past the hallway table on my way out. Our wedding photos sat there in a silver frame, Mitchell and me on the courthouse steps, September 2009, holding hands and squinting into autumn sunlight. We'd looked happy. Maybe we had been. 15 years. I'd waited 3 months to see if I was right. Tonight, I'd know for certain. I drove to Le Pigeon alone, but I wasn't going there to eat. I was going there to see if the man I'd married 15 years ago still existed, or if I'd been sleeping next to a stranger. Le Pigeon sits on East Burnside like a secret waiting to be told. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the narrow parking lot behind the restaurant, my windshield wipers pushing October rain into rhythmic arcs across the glass. The building was small, brick-faced, with tall windows glowing warm against the wet pavement. Through the glass, I could see the shapes of people leaning toward each other, the flicker of candles, the intimacy of strangers sharing meals they'd remember. I sat in my car for exactly 3 minutes. Not to gather courage, I'd had 3 months for that. I was running through the plan one final time. Observe. Document mentally. Do not react. Patricia had texted an hour ago, inside by 7:30. Navy blazer back corner table. The storm was already here. I was just making sure I didn't get swept away by it. At 7:23 p.m., I locked the CR-V and walked across the lot. Rain soaked through my navy dress before I reached the awning. The door to Le Pigeon was heavy wooden, the kind that makes you feel like you're entering somewhere that matters. Inside, The air smelled like butter and wine and wealth, the particular scent of a place where a single entree cost what I paid Jordan for 8 hours of work. The hostess was young, early 20s, black dress and a smile that had been trained to welcome everyone with the same degree of warmth. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "Callaway," I said. My voice came out steady, which surprised me. "Party of 2. Her eyes flicked to the screen. "Yes, Miss Callaway, just you this evening. Just me." 2 words that carried the weight of 15 years collapsing into a single moment. "Just one tonight," I said. If she noticed anything, the absence of a second person on an obvious date night, the way my hands were clenched around my purse strap, she was professional enough not to show it. "Of course. Right this way. I'd called ahead 3 days ago and made a specific request, a quiet table, something with a view but not too exposed." The hostess led me past the open kitchen, where chefs moved in white coats under Edison bulbs, past a decorative wooden screen that divided the main dining area from a smaller, more intimate section in the back corner. My table was perfect. Small 2 chairs positioned near the window that overlooked the alley, not romantic, but strategic. From where I sat, I could see most of the main room through the gaps in the screen. I could see couples leaning close. I could see anniversary celebrations that weren't ending in ruins. The hostess set down 2 menus. I didn't tell her to take one back. "Your server will be right with you. Can I start you with something from the bar? Water, please, still no ice." She nodded and left her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. I sat alone at a table set for 2 and tried to remember the last time I'd been here. Our 10th anniversary, March 2019. Mitchell had surprised me with reservations, brought me flowers, daisies, not stargazers, but the thought had been there. We'd ordered the duck confit and shared a bottle of Pinot Noir that cost more than a week's grocery budget. He'd held my hand across the table and said, 10 years down, forever to go. I'd believed him. Our 5th anniversary had been simpler pizza at Dove Vivi cheap wine. Laughter that came easy because we were still figuring out how to be married to each other after doing it wrong the first time around. Last year, our 14th, we'd come back here to Le Pigeon. I'd noticed even then that Mitchell seemed distracted, checking his phone, smiling at the screen when I'd asked who was texting. He'd said, "Just work. Cassandra needs something for a brief." Cassandra. I should have known then. The server appeared a man in his 30s, soft-spoken French accent that might have been real or might have been part of the ambiance. "Good evening, madame. May I bring you something to drink while you wait?" "I'm not waiting," I said. "I'll have the coq au vin and a glass of Bordeaux. The house selection is fine." He paused just for a heartbeat. People didn't come to Le Pigeon alone on a Saturday night and order a full meal without waiting for their companion. But Portland was a city that prided itself on minding its own business. "Of course, I'll have that right out." I sat back in my chair and let my eyes drift across the restaurant. It was nearly full. Saturday night anniversary season October in Portland when the rain started, but the cold hadn't quite settled in yet, when people still wanted to pretend summer wasn't gone. I saw a table of 4 near the bar business, casual, probably celebrating a closed deal. I saw an older couple by the window, silent but comfortable, the kind of silence that comes from 40 years of knowing each other's rhythms. And then I saw the decorative screen that divided the room. Through the gaps, I could make out movement, a flash of gray fabric, a man's hand reaching across a white tablecloth. My heart kicked once hard against my ribs. I leaned slightly to the left, adjusting my angle. The gaps in the screen lined up just enough. There, gray suit. The charcoal one I'd helped him pick out at Macy's last month because his old work suits were getting tight around the middle, and he'd wanted something that made him look sharp for client meetings. I'd stood in the fitting room hallway while he'd turned in front of the 3-way mirror, asking if the shoulders fit right. They fit right. And now he was sitting 20 feet away from me wearing that suit at a table I hadn't reserved. Then I saw her. Not her face, not yet. Just the color first. Crimson. A crimson suit jacket, tailored, expensive. The kind of red that didn't apologize for taking up space. Her hand rested on the table, fingers long and manicured, reaching toward his. I couldn't breathe. The server returned with my wine, set it down gently, said something about the coq au vin being prepared fresh. I nodded without hearing him. My husband was here, at the restaurant where we'd celebrated our anniversaries, on our 15th anniversary, with someone else. I watched as the woman in crimson lifted her glass champagne. I could see the bubbles even from here, and tilted it toward Mitchell. He smiled. Not the tired, distracted smile I'd been getting for 18 months. A real smile, the kind that crinkles the corners of your eyes because the happiness is too big to hold inside. When was the last time he'd smiled at me like that? She said something. He laughed, leaned closer. My hands gripped the edge of the table. The wood was solid, cool, real. I needed something real because everything else was dissolving. The server had left the second menu across from me. I stared at it. Cream-colored paper, elegant script listing dishes I couldn't afford to eat here more than once a year. I looked back toward the screen. The woman in crimson was leaning forward now, saying something that made Mitchell's hand move to cover hers on the white tablecloth. An intimate gesture, familiar, practiced. Not new. This wasn't a first date. This was a routine. And then she turned her head slightly, laughing at something, and through the gap in the screen, I saw her profile. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair pulled back, confident in a way that came from never having to doubt your place in a room. I knew that profile. I'd seen it twice before at Thornhill and Associates holiday parties, standing near the bar in designer dresses that cost more than my monthly mortgage, holding court while junior associates orbited like moons around a planet. Cassandra Thornhill, Mitchell's boss, the woman who signed his paychecks, the woman he'd mentioned casually over the last 5 years. Cassandra wants this brief by Friday. Cassandra's taking the partners to Kennard for the Henderson deal celebration. Cassandra thinks I should consider the VP track. Cassandra, who was sitting 20 feet away from me wearing a suit that cost more than 3 months of bakery rent, holding my husband's hand across a table set with champagne I couldn't afford. At first I couldn't see her face clearly, only the deep crimson of what she wore, a color that demanded attention. I adjusted my angle slightly, pretending to study the menu while tracking them through the gap in the decorative partition. The fabric looked expensive even from this distance. Tailored. The kind of suit that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The kind that announced its wearer belonged to a different world entirely. The dim amber lighting of the restaurant played across their table like stage illumination. Everything about their positioning suggested intimacy, the way they leaned toward each other, closing the space that strangers maintain. His hand reached across the white tablecloth, fingers brushing near hers. Not quite touching, but close enough. The gesture of someone testing boundaries already crossed 100 times before. Mitchell laughed at something she said. I heard it clearly despite the murmur of surrounding conversations. That laugh, the one I used to hear in our kitchen 15 years ago when life felt simpler, when I still believed I knew the man I'd married. The sound pierced through me sharper than any knife in my bakery ever had. A waiter appeared at their table with a silver ice bucket. Even from my hidden vantage point, I recognized the gold label. Dom Perignon. Mitchell hated champagne, or at least, that's what he'd told me for 3 decades. Too sweet, he always said at weddings and New Year's celebrations, reaching for scotch instead. Yet here he sat, watching the waiter pour the golden liquid into 2 flutes, nodding his approval like a connoisseur. How many other lies had I swallowed whole? The woman lifted her glass. The gesture was elegant, practiced. Everything about her movements spoke of someone comfortable in expensive restaurants. Someone for whom champagne that cost $300 a bottle was simply a Tuesday evening. Mitchell raised his glass to meet hers. They held eye contact for a long moment, the kind of gaze that excluded the rest of the world. Then she turned her head slightly, laughing at something he'd said, and the light caught her profile. My breath stopped. Cassandra Thornhill, senior partner at Thornhill and Associates, Mitchell's boss. The recognition hit like a physical blow. I knew that face. I'd seen it twice before at the company's holiday parties, once 3 years ago, once 2 years ago, both times. She'd been holding court in the center of the room, surrounded by admirers and associates. Both times, I'd felt like a piece of furniture someone had accidentally left in the corner. Mitchell had joined Thornhill and Associates as Chief Operating Officer in 2019, 5 years ago. It was supposed to be his crowning achievement, the culmination of a legal career that had spanned decades. "This is the big leagues, Jude," he'd said, excited as a kid on Christmas morning. Thornhill himself is a legend, and Cassandra runs the litigation department like a military operation. She's brilliant. He talked about her often in those first months. Cassandra thinks we should restructure the filing system. Cassandra landed the Meridian case. Cassandra's strategy in the deposition was masterful. After a while, I'd stopped keeping track. She was his boss. Of course, he talked about her. Her father had founded the firm in 1982. She'd inherited not just his client list, but his reputation, the kind of legacy that opened doors before you even knocked. Thornhill and Associates occupied 4 floors of a glass tower in downtown, the kind of address that appeared in legal journals and business magazines. At those holiday parties, Cassandra had worn designer gowns that probably cost more than my car. I'd worn dresses from Macy's sale rack, the best I could do on a baker's supplemental income. She'd talked about cases and clients and corporate strategy. I'd stood beside Mitchell, smiling politely, feeling the gap between her world and mine yawn wider with every passing minute. Both times she'd barely looked at me. Not with rudeness, but with the casual dismissal reserved for people who simply don't register. I was the baker wife. She was power incarnate. "Your wife makes those little lemon squares, doesn't she?" She'd asked Mitchell once within my earshot. Not to me about me. As if I were a service provider rather than a person standing 3 feet away. I'd gone home from both parties feeling small, invisible, a relic from Mitchell's past that no longer fit his present. Now, watching them across the restaurant, I understood something that made my stomach twist. Mitchell didn't see me. Not because the restaurant was dark, though it was. Not because I was hiding, though I was. He didn't see me because to him, I had become invisible. I'd realized this truth slowly over 3 months of surveillance, watching him move through his life with the confidence of someone who believed themselves unobserved. At 60 years old, facing a husband conducting an affair with a powerful 48-year-old attorney, I had transformed into a piece of furniture in my own marriage, a fixture. Something that belonged to the house but held no agency, no threat, no relevance. In Mitchell's world, I wasn't dangerous. I wasn't even really present anymore. I was a remnant of his old life, the before times before Thornhill and Associates, before Cassandra Thornhill made him feel significant in ways I apparently never could. That invisibility had saved me tonight, because he hadn't once glanced toward the back section where the nobodies sat. Why would he? People like me didn't dine at Marcello's. We didn't belong in his new stratosphere. The bitter irony almost made me laugh. I'd spent 3 months learning to disappear to track him without being noticed. Turns out I'd been invisible all along. Cassandra finished her champagne and set down the flute with deliberate care. She leaned forward across the table, her crimson suit catching the light like a warning signal. Mitchell met her halfway. It wasn't a brush of lips or a careful peck. This was a real kiss, intimate, practiced, familiar. The kind of kiss that carried history in it, layers of previous encounters, the comfortable rhythm of routine, the kind of kiss that promised exactly what would happen after dinner ended, the kind of kiss that belonged to couples, not colleagues. My chest constricted so violently I couldn't breathe. Sound collapsed into a high-pitched ringing that drowned out the restaurant's ambient noise. My vision tunneled until all I could see was them, his hand cradling her jaw, her fingers curled into his lapel, their bodies leaning into each other with the ease of long practice. My hands gripped the edge of my table, knuckles white, nails digging into wood. The pain felt distant, happening to someone else's body. I could walk over there, right now, flip that table, send the champagne and the artisan appetizers and their carefully constructed lie crashing to the floor. Make everyone in this restaurant witness his humiliation. Make him finally see me. The thought blazed through my mind with such intensity that my body moved before my brain finished processing the decision. I was halfway to standing muscles coiled, rage propelling me forward like a wave that had finally reached shore after building pressure for months, no years. Decades of diminishment compressed into this single moment of fury. I took 2 steps toward their table. Then a hand closed around my forearm, firm, unyielding. A voice low and calm, "Sit down." The hand on my arm wasn't rough, but it was firm enough to stop a 60-year-old woman from making the biggest mistake of her life. "Sit down." The voice was female, low, strangely calm. I whipped around, ready to unleash everything building inside me. The words froze. The woman beside my table looked like she'd walked out of a federal building. Late 40s, hair pulled tight, navy blazer, gray eyes that had seen too much to be shocked by anything. The kind of person who made career criminals nervous. "Let go of me," I hissed. "Sit down first." She guided me, not rough, but inexorable, back into my chair. I sank down, breathing hard, hands trembling. She slid across from me, blocking my view of Mitchell's table with her body. Deliberate. "I know who that man is," she said quietly. "I know who the woman with him is. And what you were about to do would destroy everything." "Lady, you have no idea." Judith Calloway, Sweet Haven Bakery on Maple Street. "You've been tracking your husband for 3 months, starting after you found credit card statements from the Sentinel Hotel." She paused. "You've been sloppy about it." My blood ran cold. She produced a business card from her blazer. Plain white, professional. Patricia Drummond, private investigator. I was hired 18 months ago by a man named Graham Thornhill. She let the last name register. Graham Thornhill is the ex-husband of the woman your husband is currently kissing. The restaurant tilted. They divorced in 2021. It wasn't friendly. Patricia's tone remained clinical. Graham co-founded Thornhill and Associates back in 1982, but when the marriage ended, Cassandra got the firm. He got bought out generously on paper, but he lost everything he'd built. She leaned forward slightly. The divorce agreement included a morality clause. It's a contractual penalty for specific misconduct. In this case, if Cassandra has a romantic relationship with any employee of Thornhill and Associates within 5 years of the divorce, she owes Graham $3.2 million. $3.2 million. Your husband is the evidence, Patricia said. Mitchell Calloway, Chief Operating Officer, reports directly to Cassandra. Their relationship violates the clause. If I prove it conclusively, photographs, testimony, paper trail, Graham gets his money. I stared at her. You've been investigating Cassandra for 18 months, following her, documenting everything, building the case. She gestured subtly toward their table without turning. It's been slow. She's careful. But 3 months ago, they got sloppy. The Sentinel, a Chicago trip that wasn't on the firm's calendar. Tonight, Dom Perignon at Marcello's. Her expression hardened slightly. But 3 weeks ago, I noticed something. I wasn't the only one watching. My stomach dropped. September 20th, the Sentinel. You sat in a silver Honda Accord for 2 hours across the street. She ticked off dates like reading a police report. September 28th. You walked past Thornhill and Associates 3 times between 6 and 7 p.m. October 5th, you called Cassandra's assistant pretending to be a potential client. Heat flooded my face. You were following me. Following them, Patricia corrected. Amateur surveillance, Mrs. Calloway. Determined but unskilled. Eventually, Mitchell or Cassandra would notice. Once they did, they'd lawyer up. Scrub their digital footprints, become untouchable. 18 months of work, gone. So you decided to, spy on me too? I made a calculated decision. No apology. Contacting a subject's spouse without permission jeopardizes investigations. There are ethical boundaries. But when you showed up tonight, and I knew you would because Mitchell booked this table using the firm's corporate account that I monitor, I realized we'd reached a crossroads. She checked Mitchell's table briefly, then returned her focus. If you'd caused a public scene, they'd have hired lawyers within the hour. Every text, every email, every receipt would disappear behind attorney-client privilege. Graham's case evaporates. And your divorce, Mrs. Calloway, the word hung there, becomes an expensive war where Mitchell's legal connections give him every advantage. I hadn't said that word aloud yet. Divorce. Hearing it from a stranger made it real. But if you wait, Patricia continued, if you let me finish, we both win. Graham gets his $3 million. You get leverage, real documented, undeniable evidence that no lawyer can spin away. Evidence that matters when you're dividing assets and negotiating settlements. I exhaled slowly. The rage that had propelled me from my chair transformed into something colder, sharper. You're only talking to me because I almost ruined your investigation. Yes. Still no apology. But also because you deserve to know what you're dealing with. You think you've uncovered an affair. That's true. But there are layers you haven't seen yet. Patricia leaned closer, her voice dropping. Mrs. Calloway, your husband, isn't just having an affair. He's being paid for it. And there's more things you need to know before you make any decisions. Are you willing to listen? The question hung between us like a dare. Behind Patricia's shoulder, I could see Mitchell and Cassandra. He was refilling her champagne glass, smiling that smile I used to know. The man I'd married 35 years ago felt like a stranger now. A stranger who'd been selling himself and apparently selling me out for reasons I couldn't yet fathom. I looked back at Patricia, at her gray eyes that promised answers I wasn't sure I wanted, but I needed them. Yes, I heard myself say. I'm listening. Patricia nodded once crisp and professional. She pulled out her phone, swiped to unlock it, and turned the screen toward me. Then let me show you exactly what kind of man you married. I should have been shocked. I should have demanded answers. Instead, I heard myself say, I already knew he was being paid. Patricia's finger froze above her phone screen. For the first time since she'd grabbed my arm, her professional mask slipped. Just for a second. Then it was back. But something had shifted in her gray eyes. Reassessment. Maybe even respect. You knew. I've known for 3 months. About the affair, about the money. Not all the details, but enough. Patricia set her phone down slowly, giving me her complete attention. Tell me. I wasn't snooping. I was doing laundry in Mitchell's gray suit, the one he wears to court. A receipt fell out of the pocket. The memory was sharp as broken glass. The Sentinel Hotel, room 318. July 11th, $347.82. The itemized charges were listed 2 bathrobes, 2 champagne flutes, room service for 2 at 11 p.m. I could still see that receipt white paper with black ink lying on top of the washing machine in our basement. Such an ordinary piece of evidence for something that shattered 35 years. Mitchell has always been meticulous, I continued. He shreds credit card statements, clears his browser history, keeps his phone locked with a passcode he changes monthly. But that receipt, loose in his pocket, careless. I met Patricia's eyes. After 15 months of deception, he'd gotten too comfortable, too arrogant. He thought Judith's just a baker. She'll never suspect. Arrogance makes men sloppy. 15 months. Patricia's voice sharpened. You said you've known for 3. I said I've known for 3 months. He's been doing this for 15. I kept my voice steady. The receipt was from July. But when I started checking our credit card statements, the ones he doesn't shred the joint account he thinks I never look at, I found charges going back to April of last year. The Sentinel, twice a month like clockwork. Expensive restaurants I've never been to. A jewelry store charge for $1,847. I've never seen that piece of jewelry. Patricia was watching me like I was a puzzle she was reassembling in real time. What else did you notice? New cologne, Tom Ford, $300 a bottle. I found the online receipt. He lost 15 pounds, joined a gym near his office, not the one by our house, started dyeing the gray at his temples, little things that men do when they want to impress someone who isn't their wife. I thought about those months, July, August, September. Watching my husband transform himself for another woman while barely looking at me. Coming home late, smelling like expensive wine I didn't drink, humming songs I didn't recognize. So why didn't you confront him? Patricia asked. Because confronting him in July would have gotten me denials, gaslighting. You're being paranoid, Judith. You're imagining things. He's a lawyer. He's trained to argue, to twist facts, to make juries doubt what they know is true. I needed more than a receipt and suspicion. I needed to see it with my own eyes. So tonight, I set this up. The admission felt like confession and victory simultaneously. 6 weeks ago, I called Marcello's and made a reservation under my name. I chose tonight specifically, October 10th, our 35th wedding anniversary. Patricia's eyebrows rose a fraction. 2 weeks ago, I called Cassandra's assistant pretending to be a potential client asking about scheduling. Very chatty, very friendly. She mentioned that Ms. Thornhill had a special celebration dinner planned for Thursday the 10th to close a major contract. I knew Mitchell would be with her. I knew he'd forgotten our anniversary. He didn't even pretend to remember this morning. I felt the cold anger settling deeper into my bones, hardening into something useful. I needed to witness the cruelty myself, not just know it intellectually, but feel it. See him kiss her on the day he was supposed to be celebrating me. Because I knew. My voice caught slightly. I knew that when it came time to do what needs to be done, I'd need that rage, that clarity. Confronting him in July would have been emotional. Confronting him after tonight is strategic. Patricia leaned back in her chair, and I swear I saw the ghost of a smile. You're smarter than most of my clients, Mrs. Calloway. I'm a baker. I follow recipes. When a cake doesn't rise, I find out why. I don't just throw it away and hope the next one works. I diagnose the problem. I folded my hands on the table. My marriage didn't rise, so I diagnosed it. What about the money? Patricia asked. You said you knew about that too. I know he's spending money we don't have on a lifestyle we can't afford. The restaurants, the hotel rooms, the jewelry. I checked our savings account last month. He's withdrawn $43,000 in the past year in increments small enough that I wouldn't notice immediately. 600 here, 1,000 there. But it adds up. Patricia's expression turned thoughtful. Mrs. Calloway, your husband isn't just spending money, he's receiving it. That stopped me. What? Mitchell Calloway has income that doesn't come from his salary at Thornhill and Associates. Income you don't know about. She picked up her phone again, swiped through screens. I've been tracking Cassandra's finances as part of Graham's case. 3 months ago, I noticed anomalies. Payments from her personal account to a consulting LLC that didn't exist 6 months ago. My stomach tightened. I traced the LLC back through 3 shell companies. Very sophisticated setup. Lawyer work. At the end of the chain, Patricia looked up at me. Your husband. The restaurant noise faded to white static. You have 18 months of documentation, I said slowly. I have 3 months of suspicion. Together, we have everything. Yes, Patricia's voice was firm, professional. Together, we have a case that will hold up in any court. She reached into her blazer's inner pocket and pulled out a folded document. Not her phone. Actual paper. She unfolded it carefully and slid it across the table. A bank statement. Account holder, Mitchell J. Calloway. An account at a bank I'd never heard him mention. The kind of regional bank that didn't advertise, didn't have flashy promotions, catered to people who wanted discretion. My eyes went to the balance at the bottom of the page. $153,847.62. I stared at the number, 6 figures, money I'd never seen, never knew existed. Money that could have paid off our mortgage, put both daughters through graduate school debt-free, bought me a new commercial oven for the bakery instead of the 20-year-old one I'd been nursing along with duct tape and prayers. I knew about the affair, I whispered. I didn't know about this. Patricia's voice was quiet but clear. Mrs. Calloway, your husband, has been running a side business for at least a year. Cassandra Thornhill is paying him. The question is for what? I've run a small business for 35 years. I know what a bank statement looks like. This one was wrong in every way possible. I pulled the document closer, my baker's brain trained to measure, calculate, troubleshoot, kicking into high gear. The paper was crisp official, printed on Virginia National Bank letterhead. Real bank, real account, real money. But the name at the top made my vision blur. Account holder, Mitchell Brennan. Brennan isn't his name, I said quietly. No. Patricia's voice was steady, professional. It's an alias. His middle name is actually James. Brennan is his mother's maiden name. Close enough to pass casual scrutiny if someone asks for ID, but different enough that you'd never find it if you searched for Mitchell Calloway. Smart. Calculated. The kind of deception that required planning. I forced myself to focus on the details the way I'd analyze a recipe that had failed. Break it down. Understand each ingredient. Account opened April 17th, 2023, 18 months ago. The same month Patricia said the affair started. The same month Mitchell had come home talking about Cassandra's brilliant restructuring plan for the firm. The same month he'd started going to the gym. Current balance $153,847.62. The number hadn't changed since I'd first seen it, but it still felt obscene. Life-changing money. Hidden divorce fund money. I scanned down to the transaction history. Patricia had given me 3 months' worth of statements meticulously highlighted. Monthly deposits, $8,500. Like clockwork. The 15th of every month for the past 18 months. Same amount. Same source notation. Deposit source, Brennan Consulting, LLC. Professional services. Brennan Consulting. I read aloud. I'm guessing that doesn't exist. Oh, it exists. Legally registered in Delaware in March of 2023. Patricia pulled out her phone, swiped to a screenshot. Delaware's the easiest state for incorporating LLCs. Minimal disclosure requirements. No annual reports. Perfect for people who want privacy. She turned the phone so I could see. A simple registration document. Brennan Consulting, LLC. Registered agent, some law firm I'd never heard of. Owner listed as a trust, which was itself owned by another entity. Shell company, I said, 3 layers deep, but I traced it back. The actual owner buried behind all the legal paperwork. Patricia met my eyes. Cassandra Thornhill. Of course it was. She created a fake consulting company. I said, slowly working through the implications, and she's paying Mitchell through it. $8,500 a month, 18 months. Do the math. I already had $153,000, plus interest. The account earns 0.6%. Not much, but it adds up. Patricia gestured to the statement. The beauty of this scheme is the paper trail looks legitimate. Cassandra generates fake invoices for leadership consulting services, strategic planning, organizational development, executive coaching, all vague enough to be plausible. All billed to Thornhill and Associates as a business expense, so she writes it off on the firm's taxes. My hands tightened on the paper. So the firm is paying for her affair. Technically, yes. If anyone questions it, she can claim Mitchell provided genuine consulting services when he was first hired as COO, that the romantic relationship developed later. After the professional relationship was established, she's a lawyer. She thinks 3 steps ahead. I thought about Cassandra at those holiday parties, her designer gowns, her casual confidence, the way she'd asked Mitchell about my lemon squares without ever looking at me. She hadn't just stolen my husband. She'd created an entire financial infrastructure to keep him. This isn't hush money, Patricia continued. It's a retainer. She's paying him to be available, to stay committed, to prioritize her over everything else, including you. It's not about the affair. It's about control. The word landed like a slap. Control. Cassandra didn't just want Mitchell's attention. She wanted to own him, and he'd let her. For $8,500 a month, he'd sold himself. I looked at the withdrawals section of the statement. ATM withdrawals scattered. $500 here. $1,000 there. Every 2 or 3 weeks. He's not spending it, I observed. No, he's stockpiling it, which means one of 2 things. Patricia ticked them off on her fingers. Either he's planning something that requires cash, like leaving you and starting fresh, or he's paranoid about leaving a digital trail for personal expenses. Both options felt like betrayal piled on betrayal. I thought about the past year, the months I'd struggled to keep Sweet Haven Bakery afloat, January's broken mixer that cost $2,000 to replace, March, when a late cold snap killed my spring wedding bookings, June, when I'd had to dip into our savings, our legitimate joint savings, to cover payroll for my 2 part-time employees. I'd asked Mitchell if we should cut back on expenses, trim the budget. He told me not to worry. "We're fine, Jude. I'm making good money at Thornhill." Meanwhile, he'd been sitting on over $150,000. He watched me struggle. My voice came out flat, cold. I was staying up until midnight baking custom orders to make rent on the bakery space, and he had this the whole time. Patricia said nothing. She didn't need to. Under Oregon law, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded, assets acquired during marriage are marital property. Hiding them is fraud. Even if the account is in his name only, even if he used an alias, the money belongs to both of us. Correct. Patricia's gray eyes held a glint of approval. In a divorce proceeding, this account would be disclosed and divided, but more importantly, hiding it is a violation of fiduciary duty. Judges don't like that. It affects everything asset division spousal support, even attorney's fees. The spouse who commits fraud typically pays. The legal terms were comforting, solid. They gave shape to the rage building in my chest. I looked past Patricia's shoulder. Mitchell and Cassandra were still at their table. He was leaning back now, one arm draped casually over his chair, completely at ease. A man without a care in the world. A man who thought he'd gotten away with everything. My fingers traced the edge of the bank statement. $153,847.62. Blood money, control money, betrayal itemized and deposited on the 15th of every month. Patricia leaned forward, her voice dropping low enough that I had to strain to hear over the restaurant's ambient noise. "Mrs. Calloway, you have a decision to make right now. You can walk over there and confront them. You'll get 10 minutes of satisfaction, yelling, tears, public humiliation. It'll feel good in the moment." She paused. "Or you let me show you what happens next, and you'll have evidence that will destroy them both in court. Evidence that will matter when you're dividing that account, when you're calculating spousal support, when you're making sure you get what you're owed." She held my gaze unflinching. What matters more, emotion or outcome? I thought about 35 years of waking at 4 in the morning to proof dough. Patience had built my bakery. Patience would win this war. The rage inside me wanted immediate action. Walk over there, flip the table, shout every truth I'd been swallowing for 3 months. Watch Mitchell's face drain of color. Watch Cassandra's mask of control shatter. Make everyone in this expensive restaurant witness what they'd done. But rage was a terrible strategist. If I confronted them now, Mitchell would pivot instantly. He was a lawyer. He'd call it a colleague dinner. Business development, celebrating a closed contract. And I'd look like the jealous wife. The paranoid baker who didn't understand how corporate partnerships worked. He'd paint me as unstable, irrational, emotional. The narrative would shift. Suddenly I'd be the problem. And that bank statement, that beautiful damning document with Mitchell Brennan's name and $153,847.62 would disappear behind attorney-client privilege before morning. Cassandra would activate her 3 steps ahead legal machinery. Fake consulting invoices would be manufactured. Witnesses would be coached. Digital trails would be scrubbed. 3 months of careful watching would evaporate. I looked at Patricia. Her gray eyes were steady waiting, not pushing, just offering a choice between satisfaction and victory. I thought about dough, how you couldn't rush it, how forcing it before it was ready meant a dense, heavy loaf that no one wanted to eat, how patience boring, excruciating patience was the only path to something worth having. "Show me what happens next," I said quietly. Something flickered in Patricia's expression. Approval, maybe, or recognition, one professional to another. She nodded once. "I'll leave first. Wait 5 minutes, then settle your bill and go. Don't look at their table. Don't give them any reason to remember you were here. Where do I meet you? You don't. Not tonight. She was already gathering her blazer. Go home. Act normal. Tomorrow morning when Mitchell leaves for work, call this number. She slid a second business card across the table, this one with a handwritten number on the back. We'll coordinate from there. Patricia stood smoothly, professional, and unremarkable. She walked past Mitchell's table without a glance, just another diner finishing her evening. I watched her disappear through the restaurant's front entrance. I sat alone with my cold coffee and the weight of my decision. 5 minutes felt like an hour. I counted breaths, studied the menu I'd already memorized, calculated how many croissants I'd need to bake tomorrow to fill the weekend orders. Anything to keep my hands from shaking. When enough time had passed, I signaled for the check. Paid cash, no credit card trail connecting me to Marcello's tonight. Left a generous tip because the waiter didn't deserve to be part of this story. As I gathered my coat, I saw them. Mitchell and Cassandra were leaving too. He helped her with her wrap crimson silk, elegant as everything about her. His hand rested on the small of her back as they walked toward the exit. Easy. Familiar. The gesture of a man who'd done this 100 times. They passed within 6 feet of my table. Neither of them looked at me. Mitchell's eyes swept the restaurant briefly the way people do when they're leaving public spaces, but his gaze slid right past me. I wasn't hidden. I wasn't even trying to hide. I was sitting in plain sight at a table for two, illuminated by the soft amber lighting, and I was invisible. At 60 years old, I had become invisible to the man I'd married. Not because I was hiding, because I no longer registered as relevant to his life. A wife was furniture in the home you no longer valued. Comfortable, perhaps. Familiar. But not something you truly saw. The realization should have hurt. Instead, it felt like armor. I waited until they'd left the restaurant before I moved. Then I walked out into the October night cool air hitting my face like a wake-up call. My silver Honda Accord sat in the parking lot 3 blocks away, exactly where I'd left it 4 hours ago. 4 hours that had rewritten everything I thought I knew. I drove through Portland on autopilot, my hands steady on the wheel even as my mind raced. Past Sweet Haven Bakery on Maple Street. The lights were off the closed sign hanging in the window. 35 years of 4 a.m. mornings. Burned fingers from hot oven racks. Birthday cakes for children I'd watched grow up. Wedding cakes for couples I'd believed in. Past Laurelhurst Park where I'd taught Emily and Sarah to ride bikes on summer Saturdays. Mitchell had been there running alongside them, catching them when they fell. Or had he memory was a liar. Maybe I'd been the one running. Maybe he'd always been somewhere else, even when he was physically present. Past Franklin High School, where both girls had graduated. The auditorium where I'd watched them in school plays. The track where Sarah had run cross-country. Mitchell had missed most of those events. Work, he'd said. Important meetings. Cases that couldn't wait. I'd believed him. God, I'd believed everything. The drive took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of watching my marriage play like a film reel through these streets. 3.5 decades compressed into landmarks and memories that now felt suspect. Had any of it been real, or had I been invisible even then? Too distracted by baking and children and life to notice that my husband had checked out years ago. The Sentinel Hotel rose ahead, 15 stories of glass and steel in the downtown district. I knew it the moment I saw it. I'd driven past it 100 times and never thought twice. Now it was a crime scene. I pulled into a public lot across the street, positioning my car where I could see the main entrance. Patricia's black sedan was already there, parked 2 rows over with a clear sightline. I waited. At 9:47 p.m., Mitchell's Lexus pulled up to the valet stand. Glossy black. Purchased last year with money I'd thought came from his salary increase. Now I wondered if Cassandra had paid for that, too. The valet opened Cassandra's door first. She stepped out in her crimson suit, every inch the powerful attorney. Mitchell came around from the driver's side. He handed the keys to the valet with the easy confidence of a man who did this regularly. They walked into the lobby together. From Patricia's car, I heard the rapid-fire click of a camera. Telephoto lens. Professional equipment. Every second documented. I sat in my car and watched my husband walk into a hotel with another woman. The hotel where they'd been meeting for 18 months, where they'd ordered room service at 11 p.m., where they'd used 2 bathrobes and 2 champagne flutes. The evidence was irrefutable now, photographed, time-stamped, witnessed. This should have been the hardest part, watching them disappear into that building, knowing what they were doing, knowing I couldn't stop it, but it wasn't. The hard part would be driving home, walking into the house we'd shared for 35 years, climbing into the bed we'd slept in together for the past 15 years, since we'd downsized after Sarah left for college, lying there in the dark alone, knowing where he was, knowing what he was doing. And then tomorrow morning, when he came home smelling like hotel soap and expensive sheets, I'd have to look at him, smile, ask about his evening, pretend I knew nothing. That would be the hardest role I'd ever played. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway at 9:47 p.m. I didn't expect to see my daughter's SUV parked on the street. Emily's silver Toyota RAV4 sat under the streetlight, instantly recognizable from the car seat visible in the back window. My heart lurched. She should be home with her husband and the kids. It was nearly 10 o'clock on a Thursday night. Something was wrong. I unlocked the front door to find the living room lit by a single lamp. Emily sat on the couch, still wearing her work clothes, dark slacks and a blouse. Her blonde hair pulled back in the practical ponytail she favored when managing her graphic design deadlines, and 2 children under 5. She looked up when I entered. Her eyes were red. "Mom." I set my purse down carefully. "What's wrong? Are the kids okay? Is Jake?" "Everyone's fine. Jake's home with them." She stood wrapping her arms around herself. "I needed to talk to you. I've been sitting here for an hour working up the courage." My stomach tightened. Courage for what? Emily took a shaky breath. "I know about Dad and Cassandra Thornhill." The world stopped. I stood frozen in my own entryway coat, still on keys, still in my hand. "What? I've known since April." Her voice cracked. "6 months, Mom? I've known for 6 months and I didn't tell you, and I'm so sorry." "Emily." I moved toward her, my own shock temporarily suspended by maternal instinct. "Sit down. Tell me everything." We sat on the couch together, the same couch where I'd read her bedtime stories 25 years ago, where she'd cried over her first breakup at 16, where we'd planned her wedding 4 years ago, Mitchell beaming with pride, talking about how he'd always thought of her as his own daughter, even though he'd come into her life when she was already 7. Mitchell had been her stepfather for 25 years, the only father figure she'd really known since her biological father had left when she was 3. And now this. April 19th. Emily said, her hands twisted together in her lap. "I was meeting a client downtown for lunch. I walked past Stumptown Coffee on 3rd Avenue, and I saw them." Stumptown, Portland's iconic coffee chain, always crowded, always full of professionals taking meetings. They were sitting at a corner table, away from the windows, but I could still see them clearly. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "He was holding her hand, Mom, across the table, not just touching, holding, the way Jake holds my hand, and she was leaning into him, laughing at something he said. It wasn't a business meeting. It was intimate." I felt the same cold clarity I'd experienced in Marcello's restaurant earlier tonight. "Did they see you?" "No. I stood there on the sidewalk for probably 2 minutes just staring. Then I pulled out my phone and took pictures. 3 of them. Clear shots through the window." She reached for her phone on the coffee table. "I still have them." She pulled up the photos. There they were. Mitchell and Cassandra. April sunlight streaming through Stumptown's windows, his hand covering hers on the table, her crimson blazer. His smile genuine, unguarded, the same smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. "What did you do?" I asked quietly. "I went home and threw up. Then I cried for about 3 hours." Emily wiped her eyes. "Then I got angry. I wanted to call you immediately, but Jake talked me down. He said I needed to confront Dad first. Give him a chance to explain. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe..." She laughed bitterly. "Maybe I was misreading the situation. But you weren't. No." Emily's jaw tightened. On May 2nd, I went to Thornhill and Associates, waited in the parking garage until Dad came out after work. I confronted him right there next to his Lexus. I could picture it. Emily, protective and fierce. Mitchell caught off guard. What did he say? He panicked. Completely fell apart. Started begging me not to tell you. Emily's voice hardened. It'll destroy your mother. She doesn't need to know. I'll end it. I swear I'll end it. Just give me 2 weeks. Let me handle this professionally. He actually used the word professionally like he was terminating a business relationship. The manipulation, the calculated response. Even when caught, Mitchell had pivoted to damage control. I believed him. Emily said, and now the tears came. God, Mom, I believed him. He was crying. He said he'd made a terrible mistake, that Cassandra had pursued him, that he'd been weak, that he loved you and couldn't bear to hurt you. He begged me for a chance to make it right. So you gave him 2 weeks. I gave him 2 weeks, and I watched. Emily's hands clenched into fists. I drove past Thornhill and Associates 3 times that first week. I checked his social media. I looked for signs he was keeping his word. And June 7th, I saw his car at the Sentinel Hotel. Evening, I sat there for 2 hours. He came out with her at 10:30 p.m. Emily's voice broke completely. He'd lied to my face, and I'd let him. The guilt in her voice was a mirror of my own. Emily, this isn't your fault. I should have told you in April, the second I saw them. Instead, I gave him time to cover his tracks, to manipulate the situation. He manipulated both of us. I took her hands, forcing her to look at me. Emily, I've known since July. Her eyes went wide. What? I found a hotel receipt. July 11th. I've been tracking him for 3 months. I felt the absurd urge to laugh. We've both been keeping the same secret, both trying to protect each other. Emily stared at me. You've known since July, and you didn't say anything. I needed evidence, real evidence, not just suspicions. I needed to see it for myself. I thought about tonight. Marcello's, the bank statement, the Sentinel, which I did. Tonight. I told her everything. The 3 months of surveillance, Patricia Drummond, Graham Thornhill's morality clause case, the bank account with $153,847.62, Brennan Consulting ELLC, the decision to wait instead of confront. By the time I finished, Emily was staring at me with something approaching awe. You've been planning this, a legal strategy. With help, but yes. And I've been beating myself up for 6 months thinking I failed you. You didn't fail me. I squeezed her hands. Mitchell failed both of us. He lied to you in that parking garage the same way he's been lying to me for 18 months. This is what he does. This is who he is. Emily nodded, slowly absorbing it. When this goes to court, I'll testify. Everything, the photos, the confrontation, his lies about ending it, all of it. That could hurt you. Testifying against your stepfather. He stopped being my father the second he lied to my face and betrayed my mother. Emily's voice was steel. I'll testify. We sat together in silence for a moment. Mother and daughter. Both betrayed. Both guilty for not speaking sooner. Both realizing we'd been protecting each other from the same truth. Emily stood to leave, gathering her coat. At the door, she paused. Mom, there's one more thing Sarah doesn't know yet. My younger daughter. In Boston, finishing her pediatric residency, Mitchell's favorite. The one who'd followed him into medicine, she'd chosen pediatrics partly because he'd always talked about wanting to help children, even though he'd ended up in corporate law instead. Sarah, who called him every Sunday, who sent him Father's Day cards with Best Dad printed on them, even though he wasn't her biological father either. And when she finds out... Emily didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Sarah had always been Daddy's girl. This would destroy her. I didn't sleep that night. At 2:34 a.m., I heard the garage door open, the sound of betrayal coming home. I lay perfectly still in our bed, my back to the door, breathing slow and steady. The performance had already begun. Mitchell moved through the house quietly. I heard his footsteps in the kitchen water running, probably rinsing a glass. Then the stairs, then the master bathroom. The shower ran for 15 minutes, washing away evidence, hotel soap, Cassandra's perfume, the smell of another woman's bed. I'd read enough crime novels to know what guilty people did when they came home. When he finally slipped into bed beside me, I kept my breathing even. Didn't move. Didn't react when the mattress dipped under his weight. But I smelled it anyway. Champagne, faint but distinct. Something floral and expensive, not my drugstore moisturizer, but the kind of perfume that cost $200 an ounce. The scent of the Sentinel's luxury sheets different from our own cotton ones washed in Tide. Mitchell settled on his side, facing away from me. Within minutes, his breathing deepened into sleep. The man who'd just spent 4 hours in a hotel with his boss slept soundly. No guilt kept him awake. No conscience gnawed at him. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. At 6:15 a.m., my alarm went off. I rose, showered, dressed, went through the motions of normalcy, ground coffee beans, made breakfast. The baker's routine I'd perfected over 35 years of marriage. Mitchell came downstairs at 7, already dressed in a charcoal suit. Fresh, well-rested. He smiled at me like nothing had happened. "Morning, Jude. Coffee smells great." I poured him a cup, handed it over. "How was your evening?" The lie came without hesitation. Brutal. The Meridian case is a nightmare. We were in the conference room until almost 1 a.m., hammering out depositions. He took a sip, grimaced at the heat. "I texted you around 9, but you didn't respond. Were you already asleep?" "I was at the bakery doing inventory." The lie tasted like ash. "Didn't check my phone." Relief flickered across his face, so brief I almost missed it. He'd been worried, wondering if I'd noticed he was gone. My answer reassured him. If I was at the bakery, I couldn't have been following him. Long night for both of us then. He set down his cup, checked his watch. I should get going. Morning meeting with Cassandra about the case strategy. Of course, back to her. Back to the woman he'd left at the Sentinel a few hours ago. Mitchell crossed to where I stood by the counter, leaned in, kissed my forehead. The gesture was casual, familiar. The kind of kiss spouses share after decades of marriage, affectionate but automatic. My skin crawled. I felt goosebumps rise on my arms, revulsion, physical and immediate. This man who'd touched another woman hours ago now touched me. This man who'd lied to our daughter in a parking garage. This man who'd hidden $153,847.62 in a bank account under a false name. His lips on my forehead felt like contamination. But I smiled, steady, normal. "Have a good day. You too, Jude." He grabbed his briefcase. "Love you." The words were reflexive, meaningless, spoken out of habit, not emotion. "Love you too," I echoed. The door closed behind him. I heard his Lexus start, heard him back out of the driveway. The second he was gone, I exhaled. The performance was exhausting. I pulled out Patricia's business card with the handwritten number on the back. Called. She answered on the second ring. Mrs. Calloway. "He came home at 2:30 this morning." "I know. I have time-stamped photos of him leaving the Sentinel at 2:14 a.m. alone. Cassandra left separately at 2:08. Patricia's voice was crisp, professional. "We need to move quickly now. Do you have legal representation?" "Not yet." "I can recommend someone. Howard Sinclair. Former JAG Corps attorney, now specializes in complex asset division. He's handled cases involving hidden accounts, shell companies, fraud. He's exactly what you need." "Can you set up a meeting?" "I'll call him now. He'll see you this afternoon." Howard Sinclair's office was in a modest building on the east side of Portland, far from the glass towers downtown where Mitchell worked. The waiting room was functional, not flashy. Diplomas on the wall, JAG Corps commendation, Oregon State Bar certification since 1998. A man who'd served in military legal courts before transitioning to civilian practice. Someone who understood strategy, discipline, precision. Howard himself was in his late 50s. Gray hair cut military short, handshake firm and brief. He gestured me into his office and got straight to business. Patricia Drummond filled me in on the basics. "Your husband, Mitchell Calloway? COO at Thornhill and Associates, affair with his boss Cassandra Thornhill, hidden bank account, under an alias with over $150,000, shell company funneling payments. Correct? Yes. Mrs. Calloway in Oregon, we follow equitable distribution laws. That means marital assets are divided fairly, not necessarily equally, but fairly. Judges consider conduct during marriage. He leaned forward. Hiding assets is fraud. It's a violation of fiduciary duty. When one spouse conceals money, judges punish that behavior heavily. What does that mean in practical terms? It means when we present evidence of Mitchell's hidden account, the Brennan Consulting payments the Delaware LLC set up, the judge will likely award you more than 50% of marital assets. Could be 60%, could be 70%, depends on the judge, but fraud pisses them off. Howard's language was blunt, military directness. We'll also argue for spousal support. You've been married 35 years. You've supported his career while running your own business. He's hidden significant income. You're entitled to compensation. And the affair. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, so technically the affair doesn't matter for the divorce itself. But it matters for the morality clause case Patricia's building. And it matters for character assessment. A judge deciding asset division will absolutely factor in that your husband conducted an 18-month affair with his boss while hiding money from you. Howard tapped his pen on the desk. It paints a picture. Deception, manipulation, financial abuse. Financial abuse. I hadn't thought of it that way, but he was right. Patricia and I will coordinate, Howard continued. She's gathering evidence for Graham Thornhill's case against Cassandra. That evidence helps you too. Photos, bank records, testimony. She's good at what she does, meticulous. Between her documentation and your daughter Emily's testimony about confronting Mitchell in May, we have a solid case. How long will this take? Depends. If Mitchell contests, could be months. If he realizes he's caught and agrees to negotiate, could be weeks. Howard met my eyes. But we need to file soon. Before he has a chance to move that money, 3 days, I'll have the papers ready. You serve him and the account gets frozen immediately by court order. 3 days, 72 hours until Mitchell's world collapsed. I left Howard's office at 4:47 p.m. The October sun was already low, casting long shadows across the parking lot. My phone buzzed. A text from Mitchell. Dinner tonight, I want to make up for missing our anniversary. I stared at the message. The oblivious audacity of it. He had no idea. No clue that I'd been at Marcello's watching him kiss Cassandra. No clue that Patricia had photographed him entering the Sentinel. No clue that Emily had known for 6 months. No clue that Howard Sinclair was drafting divorce papers at this very moment. Mitchell thought he'd gotten away with it. Thought his performance this morning, the coffee, the forehead kiss, the love you had worked. The clock had already started counting down. In 3 days, his world would explode. I texted back, sure, 7 p.m. One more performance. One more dinner pretending everything was fine. Then the hammer would fall. Before I reveal what Patricia discovered in those text messages, something that will change everything you thought you knew about this affair, type the number 10 in the comments if you're still with me. I need to know you're ready for this. Please note the following story contains fictionalized elements for narrative purposes. If you prefer not to continue, feel free to pause here and explore other content. 3 days felt like 3 years, but I was a baker. I knew how to wait for something to rise. October 14th arrived cold and clear. I met Patricia at a coffee shop on the east side of Portland, far from Mitchell's downtown world. She arrived with a leather portfolio, the kind lawyers carried into courtrooms. Everything's here, she said, sliding it across the table. 18 months of documentation, ready for Howard to file tomorrow. I opened it carefully, the weight of evidence organized and devastating. 47 photographs, time-stamped, dated. Mitchell and Cassandra entering the Sentinel Hotel, exiting together hours later, kissing outside Marcello's restaurant, holding hands at a different restaurant I didn't recognize, walking into her condominium building downtown, his Lexus parked in her private garage. Each photo was captioned with precision October 10th, 2024, 9:47 p.m. Mitchell Calloway and Cassandra Thornhill entering the Sentinel Hotel lobby. Patricia's professional thoroughness left no room for interpretation. 23 documented visits to the Sentinel, Patricia said. Always room 318. Always charged to Brennan Consulting LLC's corporate card, which Cassandra controls. Sometimes overnight, sometimes just a few hours. Room 318. The same room from the receipt I'd found in July. They had a routine, a pattern. This wasn't passion, it was scheduled. Bank statements. Patricia continued tapping another section of the portfolio. Mitchell Brennan's account at Virginia National Bank. 18 months of $8,500 deposits from Brennan Consulting, LLC. Total $153,847.62. The number I'd memorized. The number that represented my husband's price. And these. She pulled out a stack of invoices. Professional. Official looking. Brennan Consulting, LLC letterhead. Services rendered leadership development consultation. Strategic planning session. Executive coaching. All billed to Thornhill and Associates. All signed by Cassandra Thornhill as authorizing partner. Fake, I said. Completely. But sophisticated. If anyone audited the firm's expenses, these would pass initial scrutiny. Cassandra's smart. She created paper cover for the payments in case Graham's lawyers came looking. Patricia's gray eyes were steady. She's a master at this. I stared at the invoices, the casual fraud, the calculated deception. Cassandra hadn't just stolen my husband, she'd built an entire financial structure to support the theft and protect herself. There's more, Patricia said quietly, something we obtained through discovery in Graham's lawsuit against Cassandra. Discovery, legal process. When you sue someone, you can subpoena their phone records, emails, text messages. Graham's attorneys filed a motion 3 weeks ago demanding Cassandra turn over her communications related to Mitchell and the morality clause violation. Patricia pulled out a printed document. She complied. She had to. Court order. She slid the paper across the table. A text message chain, printed on legal paper, certified by the court as authentic. The header read text conversation between Cassandra Thornhill and Rebecca Morrison, September 3, 2024. Rebecca Morrison. I vaguely recognized the name, another attorney at Thornhill and Associates, Cassandra's longtime friend and colleague. I read the messages. Cassandra Graham's lawyers are sniffing around. They know about Mitchell. Rebecca, shit. What are you going to do? Cassandra. What I've always planned to do. Mitchell is my insurance policy. Rebecca, insurance policy. Cassandra. If I get caught, I'll flip the script. I'll say he harassed me, that he coerced me into a relationship, that I tried to end it, but he became obsessive. I'll play the victim of an aggressive subordinate who couldn't handle rejection. Rebecca, that's brilliant and risky. Cassandra, it's perfect. I fire him for inappropriate conduct. I keep the $3.2 million because I didn't violate the morality clause. I was the victim of workplace harassment. Graham loses. Mitchell loses. I win. Rebecca, you're terrifying. Cassandra, I'm a survivor. I read the messages 3 times. Each time the words cut deeper. Mitchell is my insurance policy. Not her partner, not her lover. Her insurance policy. A pawn. A tool to be discarded when convenient. Cassandra had never cared about him. She'd been using him from the beginning. The affair, the payments, the hotel rooms, all of it had been strategy. And she'd built in her exit plan from day one. Destroy Mitchell if necessary to save herself. The false accusation. The victim narrative. In this era with harassment and power dynamics under scrutiny, Cassandra's story would be believable. Powerful female attorney pressured by male subordinate. She'd be sympathetic. Mitchell would be ruined. And she'd keep every penny of the money she'd paid him because legally, if he harassed her, the morality clause wouldn't apply. She'd be the innocent party. It was brilliant, sociopathic but brilliant. She was always planning to throw him under the bus, I said. From the start, Patricia confirmed. Mitchell thought he was in a relationship. Cassandra thought he was leverage. I felt something strange, not sympathy exactly, but a kind of dark clarity. Mitchell had betrayed me. He'd lied, hidden money, conducted an 18-month affair. He was guilty of everything I'd accused him of. But he was also a fool. Cassandra had played him perfectly. He'd thought he was special, thought a powerful woman had fallen for him. Instead, he'd been a pawn in a chess game he didn't even know he was playing. Does this help Graham's case? I asked. Immensely. These texts prove premeditation, conspiracy, fraud. Cassandra can't claim the affair was innocent if she was simultaneously planning to frame Mitchell for harassment. Patricia's smile was thin. Graham's lawyers are salivating. And my case, it shows Mitchell wasn't just cheating. He was being manipulated by someone who intended to destroy him. The court will see him as both perpetrator and victim. She paused. It doesn't excuse what he did to you, but it adds layers. Layers. My husband was a villain and a fool, a betrayer and a pawn. I didn't know whether to feel vindicated or disgusted. Patricia closed the portfolio, but her hand lingered on it. Mrs. Calloway, there's one more thing. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. We found a second bank account and a second woman. The world tilted. What? Your husband isn't just having one affair, he's running two simultaneously. Patricia's voice was clinical, professional, but I heard the apology underneath. Different woman, different account. It's recent, started about 4 months ago, but it's real. I stared at her. 47 photos, 23 hotel visits, $153,000. Emily's 6 months of guilt, my 3 months of surveillance. And there was another woman, another bank account, another entire betrayal I hadn't even known existed. The second woman's name was typed in Arial font on a bank statement I'd never seen before. Evelyn Driscoll, 62 years old, widow, net worth $15 million. Patricia slid the document across the table. A different bank this time, First Commerce Bank of Oregon. A different account holder name, Mitchell J. Calloway. Not an alias. His real name, which meant he wasn't hiding this one as carefully. Or he'd gotten arrogant. Cash deposits. Patricia set her finger tracing down the column of transactions. Irregular amounts. 3,000 here, 5,000 there, 2,000. They look like gifts, not systematic payments like Cassandra's setup. I scanned the dates, June 17th, July 3rd, July 29th, August 14th, September 9th, September 30th, 6 deposits over 4 months. The amounts added up to $24,652.38. Combined with the Cassandra account, Mitchell had hidden $178,500 from me. $178,500. I'd been married to this man for 35 years. I'd built a business, raised 2 daughters, stayed up nights when he studied for the bar exam, moved cities when his career demanded it. And he'd accumulated nearly $200,000 in secret accounts while I'd struggled to replace a $2,000 mixer. Who was Evelyn Driscoll? My voice came out flat, emotionless. I'd moved past shock into some new territory I didn't have a name for. Client of Thornhill and Associates, widow. Her husband died in 2022. Arthur Driscoll, commercial real estate developer. Left her a substantial estate. Patricia pulled out another document. She hired the firm to manage the estate's legal complexities, trust administration, tax issues, property transfers. Mitchell was assigned as her primary point of contact in his role as COO, client services. Of course, Mitchell had access to wealthy, vulnerable clients. He knew their financial situations, their personal circumstances, their loneliness. How did this start? Based on the bank records and some background investigation, Mitchell began seeing her around June of this year, 4 months ago. Patricia's tone remained clinical, but I heard the distaste underneath. She'd been widowed for 2 years. According to people who know her, she was lonely, grieving, vulnerable. And Mitchell saw an opportunity. Yes, Patricia didn't soften it. The cash deposit suggests she's giving him money voluntarily. Probably thinks she's helping him somehow. The amounts are irregular. which means they're not structured payments like Cassandra's retainer. They're gifts. Gift, I repeated. What did he tell her? What lie made her think he needed help? Patricia hesitated. I spoke to a friend of Evelyn's yesterday, carefully, discreetly. Evelyn's been telling people she met someone, a lawyer from the firm handling her estate. She's described him as going through a difficult divorce and supporting a sick wife who needs expensive medical care. The room spun. He told her I'm sick. According to what she's told friends, you and Mitchell are separated but still living together as roommates because you need health insurance through his job to cover ongoing cancer treatment. Cancer. Mitchell had told this woman I was dying of cancer, that he was a devoted, selfless man caring for his terminally ill wife, while longing for freedom to start a new life with someone who understood him. He'd weaponized my imaginary illness to manipulate a lonely widow into giving him money. I felt bile rise in my throat. The friend said Evelyn's been giving him cash to help with medical expenses and to help him get back on his feet when he can finally leave the marriage. Patricia's gray eyes were hard now. She thinks she's saving him, thinks she's the good woman helping a good man escape a tragic situation. She has no idea about Cassandra. None. And Cassandra has no idea about her. Patricia paused. Mitchell has been running two completely separate relationships with two completely different cover stories, pulling in money from both. I thought about Cassandra's text messages. Mitchell is my insurance policy. She'd been using him, but Mitchell had been using everyone. Cassandra for her money and status, Evelyn for her cash and sympathy, me for the stability and cover of a long marriage. He wasn't a fool caught between two powerful women. He was a con artist running 3 separate cons simultaneously. He's targeting wealthy women, I said slowly. Cassandra's powerful and calculating. Evelyn's vulnerable and generous. Different approaches for different marks. Exactly. Patricia's voice held grim approval. Your husband isn't having affairs. He's running a systematic operation, emotional manipulation for financial gain. I thought about the man who'd kissed my forehead yesterday morning, the man who'd asked me to dinner to make up for our anniversary, the man who slept soundly beside me after spending 4 hours at the Sentinel with Cassandra, while somewhere across town, a 62-year-old widow believed he loved her and was saving him from his dying wife. The cruelty was breathtaking. Evelyn Driscoll lost her husband 2 years ago, I said. She's grieving, lonely. She thought she found someone who cared about her. Yes. And he's been lying to her for 4 months, taking her money, letting her believe she's helping him while he's sleeping with his boss and coming home to the wife he told her was dying. Yes. I looked at Patricia. We need to tell her. Patricia nodded slowly. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Mrs. Calloway, I can contact Evelyn Driscoll. Tell her what we found. She deserves to know she's been deceived the same way you were. I thought about a 62-year-old widow, alone, believing a man loved her, giving him money she thought would help him escape a terrible situation, probably planning a future with him. She was me, just 2 years older and 2 years deeper into grief. If I'd lost Mitchell to death instead of discovering his betrayal, I would have been vulnerable too. Lonely, hungry for connection, easy prey for someone like Mitchell. Evelyn Driscoll deserved better than to keep living in Mitchell's lie. Yes, I said, call her. Patricia pulled out her phone, already scrolling to a contact. I'll set up a meeting, tomorrow if she's available. You should be there. Me? You're the dying wife he's been using as an excuse. She needs to see you alive and healthy and furious. Patricia's expression was fierce. She needs to know the truth from the woman who's been living it. I nodded. Tomorrow I'd meet the other woman, not Cassandra, who'd knowingly used my husband as a pawn, but Evelyn, who'd been conned the same way I had. 2 victims, 1 predator, and a reckoning coming. Evelyn Driscoll arrived at Patricia's office at 6 p.m. She looked like she'd been hollowed out by pain and shock. 62 years old. Widow. Gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, navy coat, the kind of woman who'd built a life on dignity and trust, and who'd just discovered both had been weaponized against her. Patricia had called her that morning, told her there was something she needed to know about Mitchell Calloway. Now Evelyn sat across from me in Patricia's conference room, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes red but dry. "Mrs. Calloway," she said quietly, "Patricia told me you're Mitchell's wife, that you've been married 35 years, that you're very much alive and not dying of cancer." The words landed like stones. "I'm sorry," I said. "I had no idea he was telling you. He told me you were separated, that you were living together only because you needed his health insurance to cover your treatment, that the cancer was stage 4, that you had maybe a year." Her voice cracked. "He showed me medical bills, invoices for chemotherapy. I believed every word." Patricia slid a folder across the table. The medical bills were fabricated, photoshopped invoices using templates he found online. "We verified with the hospitals none of them have any record of a patient named Judith Calloway." Evelyn stared at the folder but didn't open it. "How much did you give him?" I asked gently. $24,652. Cash. Over 4 months. She finally met my eyes. "He said he needed it for divorce attorney fees, for medical expenses, for a deposit on an apartment where we could start fresh once you—" She couldn't finish. "Once I died." "Yes." I reached across the table, took her hand. 2 women, 2 victims, 1 predator. "He lied to both of us," I said. "He made you believe you were saving him. He made me believe I had a marriage. We were both marks." Evelyn's composure finally broke. She cried quiet, dignified tears that spoke of a woman who'd lost her husband 2 years ago and thought she'd found love again, only to discover she'd been conned. "I'm testifying," she said when she could speak again. "In your divorce case, in Graham's case, wherever they need me, that man stole my money. But worse, he stole my grief. He weaponized it. And I will not let him get away with that." Patricia nodded. "We have everything we need. Bank records, text messages, witnesses. When we're done, Mitchell Calloway won't be able to run another con for the rest of his life." Evelyn looked at me. "Mrs. Calloway, I'm sorry. I didn't know about you. If I had, you have nothing to apologize for. He's a professional liar. We both learned that the hard way." She stood to leave. At the door, she paused. "He asked me for another $50,000 yesterday. Said it was an emergency, that his wife's lawyers were trying to seize his assets." Her voice turned to ice. "I think he's desperate, and desperate men make mistakes." I had to tell my daughter before Mitchell did, before he could spin the story his way. Sarah, my younger daughter, 29 years old, pediatric resident in Boston, Mitchell's favorite, the one who'd called him Dad since she was 4 years old, who sent him Father's Day cards every year with "World's Best Dad" printed on them, the one Emily had warned me about. When she finds out, this will destroy her. I called her at 8 p.m. after her shift would have ended. She answered on the 3rd ring, breathless. "Mom, hi, sorry, I just got home. 36-hour shift. I'm exhausted." She sounded happy, young, unburdened. I was about to change that. "Sarah, honey, I need to talk to you about something important." Her tone shifted immediately. "Is everything okay? Are you sick?" "I'm fine, but—" I closed my eyes. "It's about your father, about Mitchell." "Dad, what about him?" The word Dad cut me. She'd been calling him that for 25 years, since she was 4 and he'd married me and become the only father figure she'd ever known. Her biological father had left when she was 2. She had no memories of him. Mitchell was the man who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd helped her with homework, who'd sat in the audience at every school play, who'd walked her down the aisle at her wedding 2 years ago. "Sarah, your father has been having an affair, 2 affairs actually, for 18 months, with his boss and with another woman." Silence on the line, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "Sarah." "That's not true." Her voice was flat, hard. "It is. I have proof. Photographs, bank statements. He's been hiding money." "Mom, stop. Sarah, I know this is difficult. You're lying. The venom in her voice made me recoil. You're lying about Dad. Why would you do this? I'm not lying. I have evidence. Emily knows too. She's known for months. There's a private investigator. Emily knows. Sarah's voice went up. So you and Emily have been conspiring against Dad for how long? We haven't been conspiring. We've been protecting ourselves. Sarah, he's been lying to all of us. No. She cut me off. You know what I think you've been so focused on that bakery for the past 30 years that you never paid attention to your husband. And now you're angry that he found someone who actually cares about him. The accusation landed like a physical blow. Sarah, that's not... How many times did Dad come home from work and you were still at the bakery? Her voice was rising now, angry. How many dinners did he eat alone because you were baking for someone else's party? How many nights did he sleep in an empty bed because you were doing inventory or prepping for morning orders? I was building a business. You were neglecting your marriage. Sarah was crying now. I could hear it. Maybe if you'd been a better wife, he wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. The words felt like acid. My own daughter, blaming me for her father's betrayal. Sarah Mitchell made choices. He chose to lie. He chose to cheat. He chose to hide money. He raised me, Sarah shouted. From the time I was 4 years old, he was my father. He went to every soccer game, every parent-teacher conference. He helped me study for the MCATs. He walked me down the aisle at my wedding. That man is my dad, and I will not let you destroy him with lies. They're not lies. Sarah, please just look at the evidence. I don't need to see your evidence. I know Dad, and I know you. You've always been jealous of his success. He's a COO at a major law firm, and you run a little bakery in a strip mall. Maybe you can't stand that he's more successful than you. Each word was a knife, precise, intended to wound. Sarah, that's not fair. What's not fair is you trying to ruin my father's life because you're bitter and lonely, and you can't accept that your marriage failed because of you. Sarah, I'm calling Dad right now. I'm going to tell him what you're doing, and I swear to God, Mom, if you try to hurt him, you'll lose me. Do you understand? You will lose me. The line went dead. I sat in my kitchen phone, still pressed to my ear, listening to silence. My daughter, the one I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through colic and ear infections and teenage heartbreak, had just told me I was a liar, had blamed me for my husband's affair, had threatened to cut me out of her life if I pursued the truth. And she was calling Mitchell right now, warning him, telling him everything. My phone buzzed, a text from Emily. Claire just called me. She said I betrayed the family. Mom, I think we're losing her. I stared at the message. Emily had typed Claire, but she meant Sarah. Autocorrect or exhaustion or the confusion of watching your family splinter in real time. She called Mitchell. I texted back. I know, we need to move fast now, he knows. Mitchell knew. Sarah had warned him. The element of surprise was gone. I'd been planning to serve him tomorrow. October 16th. Papers ready. Evidence compiled. Evelyn and Emily prepared to testify. Patricia coordinating with Howard. Everything in place. But now Mitchell knew, which meant he'd be preparing too, calling his own lawyers, moving money, building his defense. Or worse, desperate men make mistakes, Evelyn had said. But desperate men were also dangerous. I looked around my kitchen. The house I'd lived in for 15 years. The home where I'd raised my daughters. Where I'd built my life. My marriage was ending. I'd known that for 3 months, accepted it weeks ago. But my family was fracturing, and I hadn't prepared for that. Emily on one side, Sarah on the other. 2 daughters torn apart by their father's lies and their mother's truth. I thought about Sarah's voice. The anger, the denial, the fierce, desperate need to believe that the man who'd raised her was good, that her family was intact, that everything she'd built her identity on wasn't a lie. She'd called me a liar, blamed me for Mitchell's betrayal, chosen him over me, and I realized this was only the beginning. Tomorrow, when the papers were served, Mitchell would spin his story. He'd tell Sarah I was unstable, vindictive, that I'd fabricated evidence out of jealousy and spite. And Sarah, my baby girl who'd worn a white dress and held Mitchell's arm as he walked her down the aisle 2 years ago, would believe him. I was losing my daughter, and I didn't know if I'd ever get her back. That night, I sat on my kitchen floor and broke. The cool tile pressed against my legs. The refrigerator hummed. The house was dark except for the light above the stove, the one I always left on, a habit from when the girls were young and needed to find their way to the bathroom at night. The girls. Emily, who'd known for 6 months and carried the weight alone. Sarah, who'd just chosen her father over me and was lost to his lies. I pulled my knees to my chest and called the only person who'd survived what I was going through, my older sister, Dorothy. She answered on the second ring voice alert despite the late hour. Judith. What's wrong? Dorothy was 64, 4 years older than me. She'd married young, had lived in Minnesota for 40 years, raised 3 children I rarely saw because distance and life had kept us apart. We talked on birthdays and holidays, occasional texts, the comfortable distance of siblings who loved each other but lived separate lives. But Dorothy knew things, had lived things. Things we'd never talked about directly because shame and time had built walls between the truth and the telling. I need to tell you something, I said, and my voice cracked. Mitchell's been having affairs, 2 of them, for 18 months. He's hidden money. He's lied to everyone. And Sarah. The sob came, then tearing out of my chest. Sarah thinks I'm lying. She chose him. She called him to warn him, and now he knows everything, and I'm serving divorce papers tomorrow, and I'm losing my daughter, and I don't know what to do. Judith. Dorothy's voice cut through my spiral, firm, calm. Breathe. I breathed. The tears kept coming, but I breathed. Now listen to me, Dorothy said. I'm going to tell you something I should have told you 20 years ago. Maybe it'll help. 20 years ago, I was 40. The girls were young. My bakery was just starting to turn a profit. Carl had an affair. The words hung in the air. My brother-in-law, Dorothy's husband. Carl, who died 5 years ago of a heart attack. Carl, who I'd always thought was solid, dependable, boring even. It lasted 3 years. Dorothy continued, her voice steady now, like she'd rehearsed this. 2001 to 2004, a woman from his office, younger, prettier. I found out when I saw them together at a restaurant, same way you found out, I imagine. Dorothy, I confronted him. He cried, begged forgiveness, said it meant nothing, that he loved me, that he'd end it. Her laugh was bitter. He didn't end it. He just got better at hiding it. And I stayed. The kitchen floor was cold beneath me. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. Why, because that's what good Christian wives did in 2001. Dorothy's voice carried 20 years of regret. Because our pastor told me that divorce was a sin. That marriage was a covenant before God. That I'd taken vows till death do us part, and God expected me to honor them. Because Carl promised to go to counseling. Because my mother said, "You made your bed, now lie in it." Because all my friends at church told me that men sometimes strayed, but it was my job to win him back, to be a better wife, to pray harder. Each sentence was a punch. So I stayed. And Carl did eventually end it 3 years later when the woman moved to another state. And we went to marriage counseling for 6 months. And I performed the role of the forgiving wife. And we stayed married for another 15 years. Until he died. Until he died. Dorothy's voice broke now. Judith. I lived as a ghost for 15 years. I smiled at church functions and cooked his meals and slept in the same bed and raised our children and attended his work parties. But I was dead inside. I'd look at him and remember her. Every time he said he loved me, I heard lies. Every time he touched me, I felt sick. I became a shell. I spent 15 years living in a marriage that was already over, and I can never get those years back. I closed my eyes, saw Dorothy, vibrant, funny Dorothy from my childhood becoming a ghost. When Carl died in 2019, I felt... She paused. Relief. That's the truth. My husband of 42 years died, and I felt relieved, because I was finally free. Not because I'd chosen freedom, but because death had chosen for me. And you know what the worst part is? What? Those 15 years weren't just wasted on Carl. They were wasted on me. I could have left. Could have rebuilt my life at 42. Could have found someone who deserved me, or at least found myself again. But I let the church and my mother and my fear convince me that staying was noble, that suffering was godly, that endurance was virtue. Her voice hardened. It wasn't virtue, Judith. It was cowardice. And I gave Carl 15 more years of my life that he didn't earn and didn't deserve. 15 years I'll never get back. I'm 64 now. Carl's been dead 5 years, and I'm just now starting to feel like a person again. I pressed my hand to my mouth. Don't do what I did, Dorothy said fiercely. Don't waste your best years on a man who doesn't deserve them. You're 60. You could have 20, 30 good years ahead of you. Years you choose. Years you own. Don't give them to Mitchell out of fear or shame or some outdated idea that staying is stronger than leaving. Sarah thinks Sarah's 29 and doesn't know anything yet. Dorothy's tone was sharp. She's idealizing her father because she's scared, because accepting that he's flawed means her foundation is cracked. She'll come around or she won't, but you can't sacrifice yourself to preserve her fantasy. You didn't cause Mitchell's affair. You don't owe him your future because of his failures. The church. To hell with what the church thinks. To hell with what anyone thinks. Dorothy's voice shook with intensity. Judith, leaving isn't failure. Staying is failure. Staying is choosing slow death over scary life. I chose slow death. I'm begging you not to make my mistake. I sat on my kitchen floor, tears streaming, and heard my sister, who'd smiled at every family gathering, who'd seemed fine, who I'd never questioned, confess 15 years of living death. File those papers, Dorothy said. Tomorrow. Don't give Mitchell another day. Don't let him spin his story or manipulate Sarah or hide more money or... Her voice cracked. Don't let him take any more of your life. Promise me. I promise. Good. Dorothy exhaled shakily. I love you. I should have told you this years ago. Should have warned you when I saw the signs, but I was too ashamed. Don't carry my shame. Carry my wisdom instead. We talked for another hour about her life now, about the pottery classes she was taking, about the trip to Ireland she'd booked for next spring, something Carl would never have done, about the man she'd been having coffee with, tentatively testing if she could trust again, about the life she was building from the ruins. When we hung up, it was past midnight. I washed my face, made tea, sat at the kitchen table with the evidence portfolio Patricia had given me. 47 photographs. Bank statements, text messages, testimony from Emily and Evelyn. Everything I needed to destroy Mitchell's lies. I thought about Dorothy, 15 years as a ghost, freed only by death. I wouldn't wait for death. At 2:15 a.m., I heard the garage door open. Mitchell's Lexus pulling in. He'd been somewhere, maybe with Sarah, maybe with a lawyer, maybe just driving and panicking because his perfect con was collapsing. I lay in bed, lights off, and listened to him move through the house. The kitchen faucet running, his footsteps on the stairs, the bathroom door closing. I thought about Dorothy's 15 lost years. I wouldn't lose 15 years. Tomorrow I would tell Howard to file the papers. Tomorrow Mitchell's world would end, and mine, whatever was left of it, would begin. The call came at 9 a.m. on October 22nd from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end said, "We have a common enemy." 6 days had passed since Howard filed the divorce papers. 6 days since a process server had handed Mitchell the documents at Thornhill and Associates in the lobby in front of colleagues. Maximum humiliation per my instructions. 6 days of Mitchell's lawyers calling, of Sarah's continued silence, of Emily checking in daily, worried. 6 days of waiting for the next move. Who is this? I asked, though something in the man's tone, authoritative calculated, made me guess. Graham Thornhill. I believe you know my ex-wife. I sat down at my kitchen table. The same table where I'd reviewed evidence with Patricia, where I'd made the decision to end my marriage. Mr. Thornhill. I'll be direct, Mrs. Calloway. You and I both have been damaged by Cassandra. She destroyed my business legacy. She's destroyed your marriage. We share a goal, holding her accountable. I'd like to propose an alliance. Alliance. The word felt military, strategic. What kind of alliance? The kind where we coordinate legal strategies. My attorneys are pursuing the morality clause violation, the $3.2 million penalty Cassandra owes me for her affair with your husband. Your divorce case provides crucial evidence for mine. Photographs, bank records, testimony, everything Patricia Drummond has been gathering for 18 months. I'd known this was coming. Patricia had explained from the beginning that her case and mine were intertwined. Graham's lawsuit and my divorce fed each other. I'm already cooperating with Patricia, I said carefully. She has everything she needs. You are. And I'm grateful. Graham's voice was smooth, professional. But I want to offer something more than gratitude. I want to offer compensation. Compensation, the word hung in the air. What do you mean? $500,000. I stopped breathing. Mrs. Calloway, my ex-wife, orchestrated an affair with your husband as part of a calculated scheme to avoid a legal penalty. She paid him over $150,000. She manipulated him, used him as what she called an insurance policy, and in the process, she destroyed your marriage of 35 years. That destruction was collateral damage in her war against me. His words were precise, rehearsed. This wasn't a spontaneous offer. You're offering me $500,000 to testify against Cassandra. I'm offering you $500,000 as compensation for the harm Cassandra caused you while trying to evade her obligations to me. Your testimony is valuable. It ensures I win my case and recover the $3.2 million she owes. But more than that, you deserve restitution. Cassandra weaponized your husband. She turned your marriage into a casualty of her legal strategy. That warrants compensation. I gripped the phone. $500,000, more than 3 times what Mitchell had hidden. Money that could pay for the divorce, secure the bakery, help Emily, rebuild my life. But it felt wrong. Mr. Thornhill, this sounds like you're paying me for testimony. I'm compensating you for harm. There's a difference. His tone didn't change. Cassandra paid your husband to participate in a scheme that violated her divorce agreement and destroyed your marriage. I'm offering restitution for that harm. Your testimony in my case is separately valuable, yes, but the money isn't contingent on what you say. It's acknowledgement that you were collateral damage in Cassandra's fraud. How is that legal? Entirely legal. My attorneys have structured it as a settlement payment for damages caused by a third party's tortious interference in your marriage. Cassandra interfered deliberately. You have standing to sue her yourself, actually. I'm simply offering to settle that claim preemptively. Tortious interference, legal jargon, making it sound clean. And if I accept this money, what do you get? Your full cooperation, testimony, evidence, coordination between your divorce attorneys and my litigation team, united front against Cassandra. He paused. And frankly, Mrs. Calloway, I get revenge. The woman who took my company, my reputation, my life's work, I get to make her pay. Literally, $3.2 million. Your testimony ensures that happens. There it was, the truth beneath the professional veneer. Graham Thornhill wanted revenge, and he was willing to pay for it. I need to think about this. Of course. Speak with your attorney. Howard Sinclair Correct Patricia mentioned you'd retained him. He's good former JAG sharp mind. He'll tell you this offer is legitimate. Graham's voice softened slightly. Mrs. Calloway, I'm not asking you to lie. I'm not asking you to fabricate anything. I'm asking you to tell the truth Patricia's already documented, and I'm offering compensation because Cassandra's actions cost you dearly. She paid your husband to destroy your marriage. Is it so wrong for me to pay you to repair it? The parallel was uncomfortable. Cassandra paid Mitchell, Graham paying me. Where was the moral difference? I'll call my attorney, I said. I'll expect to hear from him. My offer stands through the end of the week. After that, my attorneys moved forward without the settlement component, though we'd still coordinate cases. But Mrs. Calloway, he paused. We're both victims here. The difference is I have resources to fight back. Let me share those resources with you. Don't let pride or principle leave you financially vulnerable while Cassandra keeps her millions. He hung up. I sat at my kitchen table staring at my phone. $500,000. Life-changing money. Justice money. Revenge money. Blood money. I called Howard. He answered immediately. Mrs. Calloway, I was expecting your call. Graham Thornhill's attorney contacted me an hour ago with the formal offer. Is it legal? Perfectly legal. Structured as a third-party settlement for tortious interference and emotional damages. You have legitimate standing to sue Cassandra Thornhill for deliberately interfering in your marriage as part of her scheme. Graham's offering to settle that potential claim. From a legal standpoint, it's clean. And from an ethical standpoint, Howard was quiet for a moment. That's more complex. The money isn't technically contingent on your testimony. The settlement agreement is careful about that. But functionally, Graham's paying you because your testimony helps him win $3.2 million. He's investing $500,000 to net $2.7 million. It's a business decision for him. Does accepting it damage my credibility in the divorce case against Mitchell? Not significantly. You're not being paid by Mitchell or Cassandra. You're being compensated by a third party for harm caused. If anything, it demonstrates that Cassandra's interference was serious enough to warrant financial restitution. He paused. Mrs. Calloway, the real question isn't whether it's legal or strategic. The real question is whether you're comfortable with it. I don't know if I am. Then let me ask you 2 questions. Howard's voice was measured, clinical. First, is the money legal? You said it is. Second, do you want it? I stared out my kitchen window. The morning sun was bright. Outside, the world moved normally. Neighbors, walking dogs, cars, passing life, continuing. Inside, I was being offered $500,000 to help destroy my husband's lover, while her ex-husband destroyed her. We have a common enemy. Did I want the money? I needed it. The divorce would be expensive. Mitchell would fight. I'd need resources. But did I want it? I don't know, I said quietly. I don't know the answer to the second question. Mitchell came home on October 25th carrying roses and wearing remorse like a costume. I heard his car in the driveway at 6 p.m., heard the front door open, heard his footsteps hesitate in the entryway, the pause of a man preparing for a performance. Judith. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for a dinner I'd eat alone. 9 days since the divorce papers had been served. 9 days of silence from him, his lawyers doing the talking. His presence in the house, minimal, sleeping in the guest room when he came home at all. Now here he was, with roses. He appeared in the doorway holding 24 red roses. His face was drawn, tired. The performance of a broken man. Can we talk? I set down the knife, said nothing. Mitchell took a step into the kitchen, then another. Then, and I almost couldn't believe it, he lowered himself to his knees on the kitchen floor. Judith, please, I'm begging you. I made a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life. His voice cracked. Tears welled in his eyes. I was lost. Cassandra, she manipulated me. Made me think I was important, that I mattered in ways I hadn't felt in years. But it was a lie. All of it was a lie. I stood perfectly still, knife in one hand, half-chopped carrot on the cutting board. You're my foundation, he continued, and a tear rolled down his cheek. 35 years, 2 daughters, a life we built together. I threw it away for something that meant nothing. She meant nothing. You're everything. It was a good performance. Excellent, even. The tears looked real. The tremor in his voice sounded genuine. He'd practiced this, refined it, made it believable. And for one dangerous moment, a moment I'd later be ashamed of, I almost softened. 35 years. The weight of those years pulled at me. The man kneeling on my kitchen floor had taught Sarah to ride a bike, had driven Emily to college, had held my hand when my mother died. That history was real, even if everything else had become a lie. My phone buzzed on the counter. Patricia. A text, "Listen to this now." Below it, an audio file. "Excuse me," I said to Mitchell, picked up my phone, walked out of the kitchen into the living room. I pressed play. Mitchell's voice came through the speaker, clear and unmistakable. "I'm playing the reconciliation card. Going home tonight with flowers and an apology. If I can convince Judith to pause the divorce proceedings, it buys me time." Cassandra's voice responded cool and clinical. "How much time do you need?" 3 months. Long enough to move the assets offshore where they can't be touched. If this divorce goes through now, I lose everything. The house, the retirement accounts, half my salary. She's got lawyers, evidence, witnesses. I'm fucked unless I delay. And if she doesn't believe your performance, then I'm screwed. But she's soft, sentimental. 35 years of marriage, she'll want to believe I'm salvageable. I just need her to hit pause long enough for me to protect what's rightfully mine. My hands shook. The phone nearly slipped from my grip. The recording continued. "Cassandra, what about the Evelyn situation?" Mitchell's bitter laugh. "Still working that. She's good for another 50,000 if I play it right. Tell her the wife is trying to take everything and I need emergency funds to protect myself. She'll give it. She always does." The audio file ended. I stood in my living room staring at the phone. Behind me in the kitchen, Mitchell remained on his knees, probably wondering if his performance was working. Protect what's rightfully mine. Not save our marriage. Not fix what I broke. Protect his assets. Hide money. Delay. Deceive. My phone buzzed again. Another audio file from Patricia. I pressed play. Mitchell's voice again, but different call. "Evelyn, I need your help. Emergency situation. My wife's lawyers are trying to seize everything accounts property, even my salary. I need 50,000 to secure a separate attorney who specializes in asset protection. Without it, I'll lose what I've spent 30 years building." Evelyn's voice worried and tender. "Mitchell, that's a lot of money." "I know, and I hate asking. But once this is over, once I'm free and we can finally be together like we've planned, I'll pay you back. I promise. You're the only person I can trust." "Evelyn, of course. Anything you need. I'll transfer it tomorrow." The recording ended. I walked back into the kitchen. Mitchell was still on his knees, roses clutched in his hands like a prop. He looked up at me with wet eyes. "Judith, please, tell me there's a chance. Tell me we can fix this." I picked up the roses from where he'd set them on the counter, walked to the trash can, dropped them in. "Get out." His face went from performed remorse to genuine shock. "What? Get out of my house." "Judith, I don't understand. You're delaying the divorce to hide assets offshore." My voice was ice. "You're still conning Evelyn for money. You think I'm soft, sentimental, easy to manipulate." The color drained from his face. "How? It doesn't matter how. What matters is I know. Your performance failed Mitchell, and now you're going to lose everything you were trying to protect." He stood slowly. The mask dropped completely. What remained was something harder, colder. "You recorded me. Does it matter? That's illegal." Patricia obtained those recordings through legal discovery in Graham's lawsuit. Court-ordered subpoena of Cassandra's phone records, completely admissible, and your ongoing con of Evelyn Driscoll. That's fraud, documented fraud. So go ahead, call your lawyers. Tell them what happened. Watch them explain how fucked you are. Mitchell's jaw clenched. For a moment, I thought he might argue, might try another tactic. Instead, he grabbed his keys and walked out. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the smell of roses rotting in the trash, and pulled out my phone. Texted Howard, "File Monday morning. No delays. I accept Graham's offer." His response came immediately, "Understood. Papers will be filed 9 a.m. Monday." I looked at the roses in the trash. Red petals against white garbage bag, a performance discarded. Mitchell thought he was buying time, thought he was protecting his assets, thought I was soft and sentimental and easy to fool. He didn't know the fuse had been lit. Monday morning, everything would explode. Howard filed the divorce papers at 9:07 a.m. on Monday, October 28, 2024. By noon, Mitchell's life began to unravel. I wasn't there when it happened. Didn't need to be. Howard called me at 10:45 a.m. from the courthouse steps, Victory, audible in his voice. Filed and processed. The court's issuing the asset freeze order within the hour. Mitchell's accounts will be locked by end of business today. And Mrs. Calloway... He paused. The process server is en route to Thornhill and Associates right now. Your husband will be served at his workplace, in front of his colleagues. Exactly as I'd requested. I'd learned from Cassandra. She'd orchestrated her affair in plain sight, confident no one would question her. Now Mitchell would learn what public exposure felt like. The process server delivered the papers at 11:20 a.m. in the lobby of Thornhill and Associates. Mitchell had been walking through with a colleague discussing a case looking confident, playing the role of successful COO. The server called his name, handed him the envelope, said the legally required phrase, "You've been served." Patricia later told me that Mitchell's face went white, that his colleague took one look at the papers, petition for dissolution of marriage stamped across the top, and quietly excused himself, that within minutes whispers rippled through the office. But Mitchell's humiliation had only just begun. At 11:35 a.m., Cassandra Thornhill was served with a separate lawsuit. Graham's attorneys delivered their petition for breach of the morality clause, $3.2 million, in penalties for her affair with a subordinate employee. They included evidence, photographs, bank records, the Brennan Consulting LLC paper trail, and most damaging, the text messages where Cassandra called Mitchell her insurance policy. Cassandra's response was immediate and ruthless. At 11:50 a.m., Mitchell received an email from Human Resources. Subject line, immediate suspension, pending investigation. Mr. Calloway effective. Immediately you are suspended without pay, pending an investigation into allegations of workplace harassment and inappropriate conduct with a senior partner. You are required to vacate the premises immediately and surrender all company property. A formal termination hearing will be scheduled within 10 business days. Cassandra was executing her plan, the plan Patricia had recorded in those text messages. She was reframing the affair as harassment, positioning herself as the victim of an aggressive subordinate who'd coerced her into a relationship. Mitchell was being thrown under the bus to save her skin. At 12:15 p.m., 2 security guards appeared at Mitchell's office. They handed him a banker's box, stood there while he packed his personal belongings, photographs of Sarah and Emily, his law degree, a coffee mug I'd given him 20 years ago. Then they escorted him through the office, past the receptionist who wouldn't meet his eyes, past associates who stopped talking as he walked by, past paralegals who pulled out their phones to text friends, past the conference room where partners were undoubtedly having an emergency meeting about the scandal currently imploding in their lobby. Mitchell Calloway, Chief Operating Officer, walked out of Thornhill and Associates carrying a box of his belongings, like a man fired for cause. Because he had been. I heard about all of this from Patricia, who'd had someone watching the building, but I heard the most important part from Sarah. My daughter called me at 1:30 p.m. I almost didn't answer, 13 days since she'd chosen her father over me, told me I was lying, threatened to cut me out of her life. But I answered, "Mom." Her voice was small, broken. I saw the recordings. Emily sent them to me this morning after she heard about the courthouse filing. I heard everything. What he said about you, about Evelyn, about hiding assets, about you being soft and sentimental. I said nothing, let her talk. "I'm so sorry." She was crying now. "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. I'm so sorry I chose him. I wanted so badly for it not to be true that I..." Her voice broke completely. "Mom, I'm so sorry." "I know, baby. Can I come home? Can I fly home this weekend? I need to see you. I need to..." She couldn't finish. "Yes, come home." We talked for 30 minutes. She told me she'd been in denial, that Emily had been trying to show her evidence for weeks, but she'd refused to look, that when she'd heard Mitchell call me soft and sentimental in that recording, heard him reducing 35 years of marriage to a manipulation strategy, something had broken open in her. He wasn't talking about his wife, Sarah said quietly. He was talking about a mark, someone to con, and I helped him. I warned him. I told you that you'd lose me if you hurt him, and all this time he was... You didn't know. I should have known. I should have trusted you. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen of Sweet Haven Bakery, the space I'd built with my own hands, my own vision, my own sweat, and felt something like peace. My marriage was ending. My husband had betrayed me in ways I was still discovering. My older daughter had known for 6 months and carried that weight alone. My younger daughter had chosen her father and then had to face the devastation of being wrong. My family had fractured, but it was healing. Slowly. Painfully. But healing. At 4 p.m., my phone rang. Howard. Mrs. Calloway Mitchell's attorney responded to the filing. He's contesting everything the asset division, the claims of hidden accounts, the allegations of fraud. They're denying he hid money, claiming the Brennan account was a legitimate consulting business, arguing Cassandra paid him for actual professional services. Howard's tone was dry. It's all bullshit, of course. We have recordings proving otherwise, but he's going to fight. So it goes to trial. Yes, I've requested an expedited calendar given the flight risk and asset concealment concerns. The judge granted it. Trial is set for February 7th, 2025, 3.5 months from now. He paused. Mrs. Calloway, this is going to get ugly. Mitchell's going to attack your credibility, your character, your business. He's going to try to paint you as vindictive and jealous. Are you ready for that? I looked around my bakery. The commercial ovens I'd saved for, the mixing bowls scarred from years of use, the recipe cards in my own handwriting, the photographs on the wall customers' weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, lives celebrated with cakes I'd baked with my own hands. This was mine. I'd built this. Not Mitchell. Me. I'm ready. The trial began on a cold Monday in February 2025. The courtroom smelled of old wood and new beginnings. Judge Margaret Morrison presided, 60-something steel gray hair, a reputation for no-nonsense rulings. Mitchell sat across the aisle looking diminished, avoiding everyone's eyes. Howard called Emily first. Ms. Calloway, tell the court about May 2nd, 2024. Emily's voice was steady. I confronted my stepfather in the parking garage at Thornhill and Associates. I'd photographed him with Cassandra Thornhill holding hands at a coffee shop in April. He panicked. Begged me not to tell my mother, promised he'd end the affair within 2 weeks. Did he? No. 5 weeks later, I saw his car at the Sentinel Hotel at night. He came out with Cassandra at 10:30 p.m. He'd lied to my face. Mitchell's attorney objected. Judge Morrison overruled. Emily described months of watching Mitchell perform the role of faithful husband while running 2 affairs and hiding money. When the attorney tried to cross-examine, suggesting she'd misinterpreted things, Emily looked him dead in the eye. I didn't misinterpret him crying and begging me to keep his secret. And I didn't misinterpret the recordings where he called my mother soft and sentimental while planning to defraud her. The attorney sat down. Evelyn Driscoll testified next. At 62, dressed in gray, she had the dignity of someone who'd survived humiliation and emerged stronger. He came to my home 2 months after my husband died, she said, handling estate paperwork. By the 4th visit, it wasn't about paperwork anymore. Howard asked what Mitchell had told her about his marriage, that his wife was dying of cancer, that they were separated but living together because she needed his health insurance, that once she passed, we could be together. Evelyn's jaw tightened. He said I was giving him hope during the darkest time of his life. Did you give him money? $24,652 over 4 months. Cash. He said he needed it for divorce attorney fees and medical bills. I believed every word. When Mitchell's attorney suggested she'd misunderstood, Evelyn's response was ice. I'm 62 years old and worth $15 million. I wasn't confused. I was lied to by a man who weaponized my grief to steal my money. Howard presented the evidence. The recordings Mitchell telling Cassandra he was playing the reconciliation card to hide assets. Mitchell telling Evelyn he needed money to protect what's rightfully mine. Bank statements, shell companies, fake invoices. Mitchell's defense was thin. His attorney claimed the consulting income was legitimate. Judge Morrison wasn't buying it. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, ironically, she ruled. Mr. Calloway engaged in systematic fraud. He concealed assets through false names and shell corporations. He attempted to delay proceedings through bad faith reconciliation while moving money offshore. He exploited a vulnerable widow for financial gain. Her voice was granite. This court finds Mr. Calloway violated every fiduciary duty owed to his spouse. She awarded me 80% of all marital assets, the house, retirement accounts, the hidden money. The bakery remained mine separate property. Mitchell kept 20% and a court order for 10 years of spousal support. 3 weeks later, Graham Thornhill won his case. Same judge. Cassandra's insurance policy text messages proved premeditation. Graham was awarded $3.2 million. I took Graham's $500,000 and donated every penny to the Oregon Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I'd thought long about what to do with it. It had felt like blood money, so I turned it into something else. Money to help women escape, to rebuild, to trust themselves again. Dorothy called when she heard, "You're helping women avoid my 15 lost years." 1 year after the anniversary that started everything, I stood in Sweet Haven Bakery on an October morning surrounded by family. Emily was there with her husband Jake and their 2 kids. Sarah had flown in from Boston for the weekend. My grandchildren, 4 and 2, were helping me bake, which meant flour everywhere and giggles echoing off the ovens. We were making sourdough. I'd been nurturing my starter for 6 months, feeding it, watching it bubble and grow. Sarah measured flour while Emily kneaded dough. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Mom Sarah said quietly, "I'm sorry I wasn't here last year. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. You're here now. That's what matters." Patricia stopped by around noon. The woman who'd spent 18 months documenting my husband's betrayal had become a friend. She watched me punch down the risen dough, shape it into loaves. "Do you have any regrets?" she asked. I thought about 35 years with Mitchell, about the surveillance and planning, about the trial and rebuilding. "Only one," I said. I wish I'd trusted myself sooner. I knew something was wrong for years, but I talked myself out of my own instincts. I wish I'd believed myself the first time I felt something was off. Patricia nodded. We're taught not to trust ourselves, especially women. We're taught to give the benefit of the doubt, to make excuses for the people we love. I won't make that mistake again. I looked at my sourdough starter in its jar on the counter, bubbling, alive, ready to make something beautiful. The bread was rising. So was I. Looking back at this family drama story, I realize God gives us instincts for a reason. That whisper in your soul when something feels wrong, that's divine wisdom. I ignored it for too long, convincing myself I was being paranoid, ungrateful, unloving. Don't be like me. Don't wait years to trust yourself. When I share this family revenge stories with other women, they ask if revenge was worth it. Here's my truth. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. Revenge is bitter and consuming. Justice is claiming what's rightfully yours and ensuring predators face consequences. My personal belief, every family drama story teaches us something. Mine taught me that patience isn't the same as passivity, that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, that starting over at 60 isn't failure, it's courage. These family revenge stories often end with the question, would you do it differently? Yes. I'd trust myself sooner. I'd believe my daughters when they tried to help. I'd remember that loyalty to myself matters as much as loyalty to others. If you're living your own family revenge stories right now, whether it's betrayal, manipulation, or just that nagging feeling that something's wrong, listen to yourself. Document. Plan. Don't act from emotion, but don't ignore emotion either. And remember, the people who love you will still love you when the truth comes out. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever ignored your instincts and regretted it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the courage to trust themselves. And if this resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for staying with me until the end. The stories shared on this channel contain fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If this content isn't for you, please feel free to exit and choose material better suited to your preferences. We respect your viewing choices.
That's where the story ends. Thanks for being here. I will see you in the next one.